Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Whatever you are doing or listening. What? Today we're doing something a little bit different. Today we have two plaintiffs. Wait, no, it's two, what is it, attorneys? I don't know the terminology. We have two people trying to...
We have two
attorney at law, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We have two debaters. Don't we have...
Believe it's pronounced
They're master
debaters.
debaters.
Don't we have news and stuff to go over today?
We do.
Do we, though?
So let's try that again.
No! Let's not try that again. Let's just go for it. All right. So...
I mean, yeah, it's in the description. We have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
We absolutely have no idea what we're doing.
Especially me.
Right, Johnson? So,
Yeah.
weekly news. I mean, actually, we didn't introduce ourselves. That is...
You know who we are. If you're on episode 21, you know who we are. You don't just, click a playlist. Oh, who are these guys? Let me go directly to episode 21 first.
I mean, that's what I wouldn't do, but...
Oh, okay.
You know, some
I mean,
people are
maybe they
different.
saw the title of this and thought, "Oh, this might be interesting," and then
That's
we're
true.
being douches, going, "You should know who we are. Don't you know who we are?"
Well, you should go back and watch all the other
Also,
podcasts.
jokes on them, we are douches. So, my name is Nathanael.
And I'm David, unfortunately.
I'm Evan today. I'm Evan today.
He's
Tomorrow,
Evan today.
I don't know what I might be.
I don't know. We might quit after this episode, I think. Things are just spiraling into depravity. So, what is our weekly news?
Well, we've got
You
some
you
stuff
you,
going.
you got the list
Yes.
there, buddy.
So, I guess I'm asking myself. So,
You've got the keys to the kingdom right there.
have you guys heard of Life is Strange?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
So, it's a great episodic game by Don't Nod. They recently released a small free game called The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit.
Oh.
Yes, so you can download this on PlayStation 4, on Xbox One, on PC. And basically, it's the story...
You Xbox nerds, you guys can get it now.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
I know, right?
Hey.
It was on...
Don't be so offensive. They're
Life is
geeks.
Strange was
They're
on
geeks.
Xbox, I think. I'd do it on PC first, though.
It was. So in this game, you play as a boy who wants to be a superhero, and apparently it gets really emotional and dark. But it's free. There's no string attached.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty
just
cool.
like a small free game, and I think they're doing it as promotion for Life is Strange 2, which the first episode comes out in September.
Nice.
If you guys know Kingdom Hearts 3, which I do,
Of course.
they always have a theme song by Hikaru Utada, and her Japanese version of the song, which is the theme song for Kingdom Hearts 3, is out. So, for me, I doubt for you guys, but for me, I was very excited. I've been listening to it nonstop, even though it's Japanese.
You're correct. I wasn't very excited.
I don't even think you knew, so...
No.
So there's that. Big Overwatch update is out. That makes a lot of changes.
The one with Mark Wahlberg?
Right?
No.
Do we have John Wick in Overwatch?
It has Zach Galifianakis, actually, as a hamster.
Oh, even
in a
better.
mech. He's a hamster in a mech. No,
Isn't he already a hamster?
in a mech, yes.
Well, not in a mech. In real life, he's just a hamster, but in the game, he's a hamster in a mech. Right?
Exactly. No, there actually was a hamster in a mech announced as a
Excuse me?
character.
He's a guinea pig?
Oh,
God.
sorry. Check your privilege.
Don't
Oh,
assume. No.
Don't assume
One
species.
is completely superior to the other.
So-
Or are we
yeah,
all
no,
equal?
soon that's going to be a thing. Don't assume my species.
I know.
It's like my dog identifies as a cat.
I'm speciating
What?
right now all over you. Just leave me alone.
Don't
So-
species appropriate.
Right?
Sorry, okay.
So,
Done.
basically, there is this hamster character that's going to come out in the future called Wrecking Ball. And
I
he
love it.
is a hamster in a mech, and he rolls around, and
I
he
think I
attaches
saw-
to walls.
I think I saw a video of it, but then someone put Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball behind it.
Nice.
Check it out. It's hilarious. And then the PS Plus games for July have been announced. Heavy Rain and Absolver, which is like a indie fighting game. But Heavy Rain, I haven't played it, but it looks like pretty good.
Jason! Yeah, of course I played it. That's Jason! Jason!
The whole time.
Or if
Okay,
you
see
wanna,
if we do a Twitch stream, then we got to play that game.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we got to do.
Oh
and
my
if you're
God.
talking about Detroit Become Human, it's My name is Connor. Also, I am Connor. By the way, I'm Connor. You would get that if you played part of it.
Captain. It's me, Connor.
Hey, I appreciate that you didn't hit the table.
Anyway. Oh man, We got any other news?
So
in there,
that
buddy?
is the end of our more than usually substantial
Well,
news.
we have another bit of news today. Our podcast is now on iTunes.
Ba-da-da.
I know. We sent in an application for it like a day ago. It feels
Yeah, it was like a day or two
I was
ago.
gonna say like 2 days ago, and we found out yesterday. So it only took them about a day to get back to us.
And they sent us
know,
an
right?
email that said your podcast is the most appreciated and glorified. No, they just put.
I
it
was
up.
like, "Are you serious?
No.
Why did I get that email?
Because it was the official nerd now.
Why didn't you email that?
They were just like, your email has been approved. Your podcast has been approved for iTunes. Then I went on, and they don't have our first episode. So
I know, we saw that too. We were
I
just like,
saw that.
ah.
We have 20 episodes, but our first one isn't there.
NFL, what did you do?
As an anniversary, when the year comes up, we should listen to that podcast
Oh,
And try to
gosh.
and
recreate
review
it.
our own podcast.
If we make it to a year without burning this thing to the ground, then we can go back and listen to it. But
Right.
let's get to at least 50 first.
50 years?
No, I said let's get to
Oh.
50 episodes first.
I was gonna
Before-
say.
It means let's try to make it to the age 50. Or
That's
life
everyone's
expectancy.
goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's try to get to 2050 first before we listen to our
Right?
very
There
first.
better be no loading screens by 2050. I swear. We're at that point where that's the next step, and we need to not have loading screens anymore.
Have you played God of War?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I guess it has a loading screen when you
As
first
a
boot it
sort
up.
of.
But
sort of.
Hardly.
I
any.
said but. All right. So stuff we're into.
anus.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't go.
Our
quite that
comedy,
far.
our comedy devolves quickly.
Oh yeah. Hi iTunes.
Sorry.
This is what we are.
It's like, hello iTunes. We're sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize for not apologizing. All right.
Right.
So, what have we been into this week?
Let's see. I've been in a deep hole of sadness and sickness. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no.
Let's see. I downloaded Black Ops 3 since it was free on the PlayStation Store.
Yes.
I downloaded it and I played through it.
How's it?
The story sucks.
Oh no.
I mean,
It does.
It does, but you know,
Was that at
the
least
game the gameplay is fun, I guess, and it's kind of like if you've played Advanced Warfare, it's very similar to that, just with like the jumping around and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I mean, the guns are fun to use, and there are a lot of different like varieties and stuff like that. So they have like a cool like lever action shotgun that I like. That's like one of my favorite gun to use. But the story is very bland. I don't really they really try to get me to care about a lot of these characters, and then they have this twist at the end that I was just like, what?
Let me guess. You find out that all the cops are actually white instead of black cops.
That's not what you did there. No, it's a weird like mental thing. They really try to go for this weird like psychedelic mind trip, and
I don't like when they
it doesn't really pay off. And yeah, the end, the plot twist, quote unquote, at the end, I was just kind of like,
Eh.
what? Oh, all right.
Yeah, there wasn't a draw, huh?
No, I wasn't like, what? Because I'm sure that's what I was supposed to feel. But
And it was also just like, well, I also don't care.
Yeah.
yeah, I really didn't care. I really didn't care at the end. It was just
Most
like,
people bought that for the zombie mode again.
Yeah,
Just
I was gonna
like-
say I've been playing the zombie mode more.
Yeah,
after.
I've seen play of that. That looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anyway,
So
Yeah.
about you?
I finally finished My Hero Academia Season 1.
finally,
Finally, I know, right?
welcome to 20. Let's see, when did that finish? 17.
Shh.
16,
Maybe
I think.
16,
I think
yeah.
it was 16.
Six.
I'm 2 episodes into Season 2, and yeah, it's great. I love it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
getting so good.
Hurry up.
Are you watching the dub or the?
Almighty.
Are you watching the dub or the sub?
It's sub.
The sub. Okay.
Nice.
I like my Japanese.
I was gonna say the new episode of season 3 aired today, and I watched it.
How was it?
Mm.
It's good. It's weird. Like the dub is behind on 2 episodes now. I don't know why.
Oh.
Normally they come out in the same day, but 2 weeks in a row, the English dub hasn't
Interesting.
come out, so I
Perhaps.
don't have a problem with it because I'm still getting the Japanese sub and I'm still getting the story, so I don't care. But
Right,
it's like,
yeah.
I thought I'm just like it's weird. It's like all of a sudden like, oh, you know episodes. Sorry, we don't know what we're doing.
I feel like in some of them, the sub is better than the other, but the dubs on a lot of like Cowboy Bebop and
Oh yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure I can name countless others that are
Yeah, Cory in
fantastic.
the
I
House.
mean,
Cory in the House.
That's my favorite anime. Don't you laugh.
I mean, well, then you can go to the more modern ones like My Hero Academia.
Oh, yeah.
Darling in the Franxx. That dub is actually really good. So
Dude, Sex and the City's dub is fantastic. They actually have to translate it into Japanese because it's already in English, though.
the Japanese dub is so good.
Sex in the City.
But you have to read the manga to get the real story because they changed
Yeah.
the story.
They really go off the manga storyline in the show.
They just take it
a lot
too
of
far.
creative license.
Yeah, they get to this part where they're just all practicing abstinence constantly, and it's just...
it goes against the whole story. Like
I mean, it's called friggin' Sex in the City.
Yeah.
Without the friggin' part.
I think it's Sex and the City, not Sex in the City.
I thought that's what I said. I'm just pronouncing it horribly.
Ah.
That's like a Freudian slip that a lot of people don't realize that it's actually Sex and the City. It's not Sex in the City.
Or Sex of the City.
So if they leave the city, is there still sex?
No, then it just becomes sex or city, depending on wherever they live. If they live in a town, then it's just sex. But if they live in a city, then it's like, oh, now it's just
But then the context implies that the city's involved somehow.
So I guess if they leave, it's just
well, I mean, taxes
sluts on a
suck,
farm.
so I mean, maybe that's the sex, but it's not consensual.
True.
Anyway, if they leave, going back to that topic, if they leave the farm, if they go to the farm, it's just sluts in a barn. So
then it's just two broke girls.
No one watches that anymore.
all right, David,
That was the point.
Right?
what you been doing?
I mean, I can't get out of RuneScape, bro.
I was about to just say, I swear to Jehoshaphat,
I'm sorry,
if
man.
you,
Look,
I'll play with you sometime. I
Look.
want to help you just sink further into that hole.
old habits die very hard, and this one's like immortal. But
That's what I was gonna say. Some habits never die. Some habits are immortal. I appreciate it. So
no,
I have also. Oh, go ahead.
a little bit of the escape. Let's see, what else have I been doing? I watched.
Well, you think
Have
about
either of you watched Ahiko before?
Aiko. That's a game.
No, Ahiko, the anime.
Ahiko.
No, Ahiko.
No, I think I've
It's
heard
made
of it.
by.
I think I've heard of it, but I don't think.
You've probably seen the memes where it's like super quality anime, and they're like blasting lasers through buildings. I'll show you a clip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
when
fantastic
when the
anime.
dog
bites her
bites
hand.
her.
Yeah.
Whoa,
That-
yeah,
it's that, but the whole anime, and it's fantastic.
Wait. It's like a chibi anime, or
Yeah,
No, it's a slice of life, but everything's over dramatized.
Oh yeah.
is it like with this principal who wrestles a deer?
Yes,
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
scene,
it's the
too.
one. Yeah, so like the dog bites the girl's hand and she fires a laser out of her mouth.
That's right.
And then the one girl's just like, nah, she's just stupid. And then another dog bites her ankle, and then she shoots a laser through a building. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
damn. It's
Yeah.
a good anime. You should watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
It looks funny, and then they have the thing with the coin where they flick the
I
coin
know,
at each
yeah.
other.
It's a good. It's one of those where you're just like, you don't realize how good of like the animation quality is until they get to those intense scenes. It's like when the studios want to show off, it's like, oh, simple lines and everything, and then suddenly just like smooth 60 frames a second.
we could do shonen anime if we
dude,
wanted.
totally. And I'm like, what?
When's the tournament arc?
Right. But yeah, I've
anyway.
just been watching that. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I started Assassin's Creed Origins. It's so fun. Like, it really is. I haven't played Assassin's Creed in a really long time, and it's a refreshing take. The combat is still kind of wonky, which is Assassin's Creed-esque anyway, but I feel like it's challenging enough and fun enough to where I actually care about it. Anything else, Evan?
Nope.
No? All right, well, I'm going to segue into our topic. With saying that I have been playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a newer Zelda game, but I still have not
That
beat
one's
this.
probably the best one.
That It's so good. It's very different. It's so different. It's just it's the first time in like
different because it's good.
it's like the first time in 20 years that they've made a big change to the Zelda formula. So, as you can tell by Evan's utter hatred and disregard for
no hatred, no hatred. Just
I need names for you too, so I can like formally be like, stop talking, but without saying stop talking.
Debater
Yeah.
1, debater 2.
you could use our names.
That's who are you?
I
need to listen to all of our podcasts to find out who we are.
Philanderous Shane.
Ah, okay.
I don't want to be called that.
I thought you were gonna be Jeremy Clamp or something like that.
No.
No.
Jeremy Clamp. All right, so
Jerry Panders.
So okay, I guess we have to establish who is the defendant and who. Okay, well you're defending, I guess,
I
the
mean, it defends
name
Zelda.
of Zelda. I
it
suppose.
defends itself.
And you are. What is the other one? The other one's the
Plaintiff?
I thought the plaintiff was.
I don't know.
It's the it's the plaintiff and the defendant. Defendant is the one who's defending the case or
Right.
whatever, and then the plaintiff is the one who's saying, "Hey, you did this."
Okay, so imagine.
But this is not exactly a trial. This is more of just a debate.
Yeah.
So,
Dude, I have a degree in English, not law. It's not like people who have a degree in English go into law. That's what happens.
he just knows words.
Yeah,
Fair
which
enough.
I should know. So that's
Anyway.
the joke. So
All right.
All right.
So what is happening here is
wait. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to read out the title of this podcast.
okay.
The Legend of Zelda debate: Evan versus Nathanael, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Top games of all time, or stupid?
Question mark.
You decide. Well, we'll decide, but
Well, you make the decision based off our arguments.
Indeed.
or we could decide for you.
Ha!
Choose Zelda or die. No,
Jesus.
that's my slogan. There's no in
Is that your
between.
opening statement? Good
Right.
grief. All right.
No,
so
no, no.
so
I
David
love
David will
I
be
am
our
the
moderator.
moderator.
Yeah.
I am Anderson Cooper here, and this will be a debate of the ages. I am very partial to Legend of Zelda. However, I'm not one to say that it doesn't have faults.
This is what I meant by two against one, because I feel like
Yeah, that's a great opening. It's like
I have a bias. I'm getting that out there right now.
Yeah.
But
I have been paid some bride money in the past. No.
you'll be paid more. In the
I
future.
will be fair, because it's one thing to love it as a person, but if we're in a debate, I will make only assumptions and statements based on what I hear in the debate, and that'll be what's final. Official.
based on what's said, not how
Yes.
you feel.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, my feelings have been put outside, right next to the wine cooler and the pool table.
Okay.
So
That was a spit bucket.
Oh.
I drank that. No.
Anyway. So
Okay. So I think it's only fair.
Guide
Let me
us.
see. Do I have a coin? I doubt I have a coin.
I have a coin.
A prepared man is the best man.
Yeah.
We can
Except when
flip
he's married.
this.
That's not a good idea.
Flip the coffee.
Flip a
Here you
canteen.
are.
All right. So
But is it a quarter?
it is a quarter.
Ah, good man.
Indeed.
I,
I used to carry around a Venezuelan peso, and it was 500. Probably still have it, but the coin itself is one of the largest in current production. It's about that big.
wow.
And I used to carry it in my wallet, because whenever someone was like, "Anyone have a coin to flip?" I was like, "Oh, me." And I tried fumbling getting it out of my wallet, and I actually tore one of the subsections out of my wallet while taking it out one time. I'm just like, ah.
Oh no.
Probably like
This coin needs to stay.
it's like let me flip it and like
Yeah.
knock somebody out, hits them in the head.
It's dense. It's like 3 times the thickness of like a quarter. But anyhow, so
That's why they stop. That's the only one that's being made. Because if they make other coins like that, they'll lose money.
right.
Making money.
But I've seen pictures of like some of their other ones, like I think their 100 one. It's like massive. It's like crazy thick.
Yeah.
But
okay.
so I guess before we start, like any debate, we need to have opening arguments from both sides.
Right.
So I think it's only fair that Evan starts, and then Nathaniel goes next. I will flip a coin, and that will decide who goes first on the debate. It'll
But you
be
just
5
said that
minutes.
Evan should go first. I'm confused.
Opening statements. The topic of what you're trying to argue, and the purpose that you're trying to put across.
Yes.
And then I will flip a coin, and that will decide who goes first.
After that.
And we will have 5-minute sections. And have we determined how long or how many 5-minute sections?
It's in the document.
No.
Five,
What I'm thinking is it'll be opening statements, and then there are some points I think in the
And they document
in the document that have like talking points that we want to reach. So I think as the moderator, you're going to be the one facilitating those and going to be. So I think we'll do opening statements, and then we'll flip a coin, and then we'll just go down there, and we'll
Awesome.
have.
By the way, David, you can text back my friends, but if Beyonce answers, let me know so I can answer her back personally.
Okay.
I need to be the one.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be me.
Let's see. All right.
All right. So my opening statements.
Yep.
All right. So Ocarina of Time / Majora's Mask. You can, for majority of the time, you can just assume that I'm talking about both of them when I speak.
Okay.
I will differ between the two if I ever want to make an individual point. Now, my argument is not that these games are stupid or that these are the worst games ever. That is not my argument. What I am saying is that these games aren't as good as people remember or as good as people think they remember. And I think most of the love for these games are purely nostalgic, and that it's from their childhood. And I get that. I've had those nostalgic connections to a lot of things from my past. However, when I've gotten older and then I reconnect with some of those things, I realize, wow, a lot of these things were really dumb, and like they didn't work the way that I remember them working. And a lot of the mechanics retrospectively, and a lot of the way this game was built story-wise and all that, and doesn't hold up as well as I think a lot of people remember. And a lot of people refer to this game as as something that will stand the test of time, and that it's a game that like one of the best stories ever, and it's one of the best games of all time. But in reality, it was an okay game with frustrating mechanics, and ultimately there were so many things that they could have done better, but they chose to not do it. And then that paved the way for other games later who followed that same pattern and made Legend of Zelda very frustrating for for most of the time, until we got Breath of the Wild, which will probably hold up as probably one of the best Zelda games of all time. Now, with that all being said, Nathaniel, I respect your opinions and I respect you as a person, but yes, thank you.
There was a handshake.
There was a handshake. You couldn't see it, so just take my word for it. It was the best handshake ever, I swear. No, so hopefully we walk away from this and have we find some common ground, and hopefully it's not just we leave going like, well, I disagree with you completely, but it's okay. I hope we can find some common ground, and hopefully we can make our points fairly, and hopefully this conversation doesn't get too heated.
Everyone will come away with this positive regardless of what.
Yes, that is my goal, and that is my opening statement.
Okay. Thank you, Evan. Nathaniel?
Yes, sir. All right. So I'm not looking for any compassion. I'm not looking for friend. No, I'm just kidding. I love myself some Legend of Zelda. Growing up, it was one of the first games that I played, so I have a deep connection to it. I probably went through Ocarina of Time, I want to say, like a dozen times. I played through that game a lot of times throughout the years. Just like every few years, I would replay the game. And Legend of Zelda, I think, is just something really special for a lot of gamers. Not only because I think they're personally great games, but also because they broke ground at the time. It was just something that hadn't been done before, and even though they had like pretty simple stories, and it was more about the gameplay. And that's what I really appreciated about it. It was this cool blend of puzzles and combat and simple story, and it like the story, it kind of wanted you to draw you in, and it made you want more story than what there was, which is I really like. And future Zelda games kind of don't really give you, because that's not really what it's about. That being said, I think Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, and Ocarina of Time are some of the best games of all time. And yeah, I think even with age, they hold up like pretty well considering how old they are. So yeah, I love me some Zelda. I hope you love you some Zelda after this. So go play those games. That is my opening statement.
All right. Thank you both. So I'm going to set timers here for 5 minutes each, or rather a stopwatch.
Maybe we should do 3. 5 is a lot.
Do 3 minutes. I don't think we'll have to say too much.
How about what are totals? What do you think is a fair 20 minutes total?
I think.
And then
I think
you go over, that'll cut into
the
next part of your next.
Yeah, I think 3 minutes for both. I think would be fine for both, like 3 minutes each would be fine for each topic. And then I think that would be good because then it would open up any time afterwards if you had any other questions or rebuttals or any questions that you might have that you might come up with or whatever. That would give us extra time for that. So,
well, I think we should follow our hearts. If we want to take an hour on a question, no, okay.
An hour.
Your heart will deceive you.
Who is Link really? No.
Oh, that's part of my argument.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
So let's see who goes first.
I have a coin. Evan, since you went first in the rebuttal, what would you like to call, heads or tails?
Tails.
Rim.
It is heads. Nathanael, you will go first.
All right.
And followed by Evan. Your coin, sir. All right. Are you ready, sir?
I realize I don't have a notebook. Yes, I am.
All right. Your 3 minutes starts. So I guess the first opening statement would be, what is the lasting impact on the Zeldas? Do you feel like over time it will keep its ground regardless of how things change nowadays, in which we have games that are practically lifelike, and going back to these games where you can see the differential in the quality and the gameplay? How do you think that will stand up against time?
Yeah, so I think a lot of games, especially the older ones, what you have to consider is that a lot of times they're the building blocks for future games, and sometimes they've done things that other games had never done before, and we're kind of like the initiation for a specific type, like Z targeting. Ocarina of Time brought that in, and like every action game now has some form of Z targeting. So they just have these breakthroughs, like Legend of Zelda, for example, that and that doesn't necessarily make them a good game in and of itself, because it could be like a mechanic that ends up being that is just not good, that was introduced but is revolutionary, but later on just sucks. But I think with Legend of Zelda, there are mechanics that if you go back and play it, yes, it might not be as good as some of the future games that improved upon it, but for its time it was incredible. But going back, I have played Ocarina of Time like for N64, probably like a few years ago, within 5 years, and I played it consistently every few years since I was like 8, and yeah, I just have fun every time. It's just a really fun game, and I don't think, maybe it's my familiarity with the controls, but it's just a really pleasant experience for me every time. And it's very simple, but I would say that Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask combat is better than something like Skyrim, which I think is not good. And that's a modern game that came out like how many years ago now? Like 6? Well, yeah, anyway, I think it's impressive that a game from the late 90s, is able to have combat that works and is fluid, and especially the puzzles, I think, really hold up. Because they're mostly like movement and aiming based, and they destroy stuff like Skyrim, which is just kind of not the best. And that's not like, that is kind of a knock on Skyrim, but Skyrim has its qualities and its faults, but yeah, I think it holds up against a lot of modern games and is still able to be fun, regardless of its age.
All right. Thank you. That's your 5 minutes.
Or 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I know numbers.
Yeah.
Do you?
All right.
I
All
don't.
right, Evan.
I'm ready.
All right. Any rebuttal?
Yeah. I will say that I do agree with what Nathaniel says with at the time, yes, these controls were revolutionary, and they do stand up a lot better to some games that came out later who tried to do a similar thing, but it came out looking a lot worse. So yes, I will agree with that. However, and just talking about the Z targeting thing that you mentioned, that mechanic in itself should have been left for a separate game or for a game different than Ocarina of Time, only because Zelda itself was meant to be like a pioneer, exploring open world game. Like the very first game Miyamoto ever made, or that he the first Zelda game that he ever made, it was a completely open world game that you went and explored, and you went finding caves and all that stuff, and you were you were able to explore while in the middle of combat as well. Whereas Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, if we're being real, the Z targeting thing kind of takes you out of the exploring aspect, and you have to focus on combat, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It isn't. The complex combat was a new, fresh take on this Legend of Zelda franchise that we hadn't had before. Most of the time, it was just swing your sword and hit or whatever, but in the first few games, like in the original Legend of Zelda or Link to the Past, it had a selective Z access. So if you were on the second floor, you couldn't swing your sword and hit someone on the bottom floor. But if you swing your sword at bats, they were just conveniently within sword's length. So, but when you switch that to 3D, that just becomes asinine. And you have to individually find and kill every single bat or whatever. And I know that's the nature of 3D, but imagine there was a bunch of ants in your house and you try to kill them by stomping on them, but instead you have to individually aim and kill one at a time. So, and I get that this was a new thing that they were trying, and that it was revolutionary, and that it'll hold up as probably one of the things that changed the game for a really long time, and it was really good. But the fact that people try to hold this up as that, this was so good, and it's still so good, even though going back to it you realize, oh, this is actually very, very frustrating, and it's not as good as that we remember.
All right, very good. Any rebuttals to his statements, Nathaniel?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's see. So, I think you can't judge it alone. You can't judge it alone on the whole. It was revolutionary at the time, and just say, oh, therefore it's a good game, because it was revolutionary at the time, so it holds up. I agree with that. But I think The Legend of Zelda as a whole is just, having played it a lot, I think it does hold up to a lot of games. And I think one thing is that you don't always have to Z aim in order to attack enemies. Like, you can free aim with your bow and shoot stuff, or use a hook shot and free aim. So it isn't completely dependent on the Z targeting system. And I think that was one thing that made it so fluid and so intuitive, was the ability to have that option. And I think the gameplay is simple enough to where it's not really frustrating to me. And again, it seems like it's just a differing opinion that we have on whether or not it's frustrating. But I honestly have a lot more problems with a lot of modern games and their gameplay. For example, let's see, maybe I can't come up with an example on the spot, but there are just a lot of games that I've played recently that their gameplay doesn't hold up, and they have a lot of glitches and mistakes. And that's one thing Ocarina of Time doesn't really have much, are glitches that are just happening all the time. Usually you have to go really out of your way to find something that breaks the game. And I think and yes, games are more complex now, but it's just there's less stuff that takes you out of the experience, I think. That's my rebuttal.
Okay. Very good. I think we will head on to another topic now. Are they still fun? Obviously, both of these games have been renowned for being, great games of their time. But are they still fun? Is it a game that you can go back to currently and still find the fascination with? Is it competitive with current games like with Breath of the Wild or other open source games such as that? Evan, if you have anything on that.
I would say, if we're comparing it to Breath of the Wild, no, it's not. It doesn't hold up. It's not the same. And not just because it's a different game, but just Breath of the Wild does a lot of things that I think Ocarina of Time could have done really well, even for being a game of its time, like even being a game like in the late 90s, it still could have implemented a lot of the things that the Breath of the Wild did, but it didn't. And what ended up happening was, the reason why Breath of the Wild was so great is because it was so open-ended, and like so open-ended to the point where as soon as you start the game, you can go straight to the final boss and try to fight him if you wanted. And but in Ocarina of Time, it was very, I don't want to say hand-holdy because it did kind of leave some things for you to figure out in the dungeons and all that stuff, and you did kind of have to figure things out. But there was a set script where you had to go here, then you had to go here, and then you had to go here, and then it was a very much kind of like you were being taken on a tour. And instead of being an adventurer, I'm forced to run around and make sure I hit A in all the right places so I can progress the story and then go to where I need to go. Whereas, we're comparing it to Breath of the Wild, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, but I do know that there is still a story element to it, and that you do have to like progress through dialogue with characters and stuff like that. But those are things that you can go and those are things that you go and engage yourself. No one's telling you to go do that. And the idea that that they're trying to create a story to make you feel like a hero. No, playing the game and doing the things in the game is what makes you feel like a hero. It's defeating these things and making them, like saving the world is your idea of fun, not being told to save the world. Because then you're not going on an adventure. You're fulfilling a task for this person, and there's so much progress that is stopped only so that you have to go and make sure that you talk to the right people, and that just slows down the story, and it slows down the story you're trying to tell, and then it creates this "you can't tell me what to do" attitude in a game, and that's the last thing you want your gamer to feel when you're trying to complete like a story game. Is if someone says, "Hey, you should go do this." Well, I've been doing everything you asked me to do, so I don't want to do that.
All right. Nathaniel?
Yeah.
Any rebuttal to that argument?
Yeah, I think Ocarina of Time is definitely more linear than, for example, Breath of the Wild, where it's incredibly open-ended. But I don't think that just because something is more linear necessarily makes you not feel like an adventure, or doesn't make it fun, or makes you like not want to follow the path that's set. For example, my favorite game is The Last of Us, which is probably one of the most linear games I've ever played. And it is like very handholdy in a way, and does tell the story they want to tell. But again, like Legend of Zelda is another story, but like what is The Legend of Zelda really supposed to be? Yeah, it's supposed to be an adventure game, and you're supposed to, based on the first one, you're supposed to just forge your own path and explore and find new things and just feel like a hero. But I think Ocarina of Time does do that with the way that it's set up. I remember when I played that game. If you play that game and you haven't played it before, it's not really open world. There weren't really open world games at the time, but in this game, it's like faux open world, in the sense that there are several things that you can do out of order. There's several places that you can go and things you can discover and heart pieces that you can gather that you don't necessarily have to. So it's kind of like the side quest idea. But there is definitely a main path that you have to follow, but it still makes you feel like an adventurer, because you can go a lot of different places, even though in them you can't necessarily do everything. there is a lot of just element of discovery and wonder, and just like what would happen if I like do something here. And yeah, I think it does a really great job of having you just feel like you're discovering things that you weren't meant to discover. And there's just so many secrets in the game that you discover in ways that you wouldn't expect. And it's just that sense of, I think, wonder and possibility that really draws me in. And as for the story, it has, I mean, the first Legend of Zelda has next to no story. It was like all in the booklet, which is completely different Ocarina of Time, which compared to that has a heavy amount of story. But if you compare it to a lot of other games, it honestly doesn't have that much story. Most of the talking in the game is just talking to villagers and stuff about side quests and stuff like that. But the main story is actually pretty sparse. It's basically you're just going to save Zelda, and that's about it. after you meet Ganondorf for the first time and Zelda gets kidnapped. But I think it tells a really appealing story with a little bit, just a little bit of time that they focus on it.
All right. Retorts?
Yeah, I will say, I think that, I think to find a game that did this, I think a little bit better, before, I think to find a Legend of Zelda game that did it better than Ocarina of Time before Breath of the Wild, we have to go back to the what you call it, a link to the past, because yes, that game was very linear as well. However, it was more like the original Zelda aesthetically, but it had a lot of different things that were added to it. And what I mean by exploring, in you get items from dungeons that have nothing to do with the sometimes you get items from dungeons that have nothing to do with the boss in that dungeon. Sometimes you get items that you have to defeat a boss that you don't even get in a dungeon. And yes, like there is like points on the map that you have to go to, but exploration is required to finish the game. So it really encourages you to go out and explore more and find more things. Whereas Zelda, or the Ocarina of Time, if there's a cave in a wall, you're not going to find like a boss battle in there. There's just going to be a chest where you find a bomb and leave. They're not going to risk their formula for a little bit of excitement. And I don't have a problem with linear games. I don't. But if you're advertising an open world game, and the only really open world thing about it is that you can run around this big open world and do side missions, it's hard for me to wonder about the world when all I know is that there's probably some rupees out there and a guy who wants me to do a thing for him. I'm not going to find like a side boss out there somewhere who's different than the ones that I'm fighting. And it's so linear to the point where all the items that you get in dungeons is directly linked to the boss that you're fighting in that dungeon. And some would say that that's good game design. However, it's kind of hard for me to wonder wide-eyed about what's going to happen to something, but it's so predictable. Like, I have a mirror shield, I guess I'm going to have to reflect light at something. Or, a boomerang, I guess I have to throw it at something. So it's weird that I'm not trying to accuse you of being an apologist, but the idea that it's an open world, quote unquote. It's a linear open world where you have to really do everything he says to like complete the game, and it's like
all right. Well, I have a different question.
Oh.
Current question. Obviously, games nowadays are getting up in the price whenever they're new. Did a little bit of research into these games, and it seems like Ocarina of Time still goes for about $35 to $40 just the original cartridge. and same for Majora's Mask, a little bit more for Majora's Mask. Do you think currently somebody would get their worth out of the game paying that $35 to $40, assuming they had a Nintendo 64 to play these? Would that be worth the game? Do you think that that's worth its money compared to games currently? Do you feel as if it needs to be less for someone to have worth of playing it?
Well, I was gonna say, allow me. I think so. I think it's worth it only because it's a part of history. You know what I mean? And it's and I'm not saying that game didn't revolutionize the way that we look at games. It definitely did. I'm not taking that away from it. So if someone had like an original copy, they could sell it for a lot of money, and they could and the person who bought it would definitely get their money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not
I
trying
think
to-
in the sense of the question, do you think that compared to a game that's $80 now and how much you get out of current games, do you feel as though the quality of game to price ratio would be worth playing for that $35 or more, considering you would have to, if you don't have a Nintendo 64 and all the bits and bops that go with it?
Yeah. I think that keeping it where it is, keeping it at the 35, I think for what it has, what it contains, I think is reasonable. I don't think charging someone $60 for Ocarina of Time would be reasonable. I don't think for like how it is now. You know what I mean? There's like the remastered version that came out or whatever, but that's different.
Yeah.
But if Ocarina of Time came out now, the way that it is, I'm not paying $60 for that. I'm not paying $80 for that. Are you out of your mind? But I think someone could get it and be happy with it. I'm not saying that,
Right.
but at the same time, like, I don't think it's worth being considered like a AAA title now. I don't think it is.
All right. Rebuttals?
I think I agree with Evan. I don't think it's really worth more than $40 as an experience that you'd want to play. And I think that's just because games have changed so much and games are bigger and have better graphics and are just a different package nowadays. Also, they did remaster, like you said, Ocarina of Time for 3DS. They also did that with Majora's Mask, and they're at a $40 price point, and that's with updated graphics and tweaked controls and stuff like that. But yeah, I think there are a lot of games that come out nowadays that have almost no substance. For example, Black Ops 4. It has no campaign. It's just online multiplayer. It's very limited modes that you just play over and over. And I mean, that's fun for some people, but I would prefer a game like Ocarina of Time to just playing like Black Ops Online, which is like, I want to say the deluxe edition is about $90, $80. It's around that price point. And one thing I do want to say about Ocarina of Time and just older games is they're because of how old they are and because they did some things that are revolutionary. I will agree with Evan on the point that they don't age as well necessarily, because developers they can't figure out like in 20 years or like in the development cycle of the game, like what develops in like 20 years after that. It's like impossible. So like what they did implement, you do kind of have to gauge like for the time, how was it. But that also just, that's why a lot of people, when they have it on their list of best games of all time, they have to kind of consider the time for it, and say like, oh yeah, at the time it was one of the best. But I think I still think it holds up like remarkably well. But yeah, I will say that, like, for example, Breath of the Wild, I think gameplay wise blows it out of the water. It just does. But I think it's definitely, when you're considering games and listing them and saying which games are the best, it is important to take the time into consideration, just because I think it would be blind of me to say that its gameplay is like equal to Breath of the Wild, for example, because Breath of the Wild has had like 20 years on it to just improve upon that. But yeah, I still think it's a fun game that I would still play today. Not just, well, nostalgia is a big reason I would still play it today because I've played it a bunch of times.
Right. How are we doing on time? Okay. So, a little add-on to that question is, so it's not worth the $60. What would make it worth the $60? And I'll start with Nathanael since I started with Evan last time.
All right.
So, do you feel, having established that the game is not worth as much as it is, do you feel is there a opportunity to bring this back in any sort of form to make it worth that $60, or do you feel that the game is fine as it is and any improvement would change it too much?
Well, we have Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for 3DS, and I think those two made all the changes I would have liked to see, particularly, I mean, in graphics, for example. They're just not as polygonal, and they just don't look as outdated graphically, which is something you can't really get around with older games. I mean, they just had different graphical capabilities at the time. I'm not going to argue that Ocarina of Time looks good, because it doesn't. The only good thing about it is like its art style, but they can't necessarily communicate that for the time. They just didn't have that ability to do it at that price point. But to make it worth $60, honestly, I think the remakes are worth $50. I would pay $50 for each of them on 3DS. But if you put it on a console and had like console-worthy graphics with the improvements that were made to the 3DS version, I would pay $60 for that.
So if they ported something to the Switch, with
for example,
a brand new remastered, new game mechanic,
well,
Ocarina of Time / Majora's Mask, would you then pay the $60 to $80 that it'd be worth?
If it had the same game mechanics as a 3DS and as the 3DS ones, which are just very minor tweaks, then yeah, I would pay $60. Not any radical changes to the games.
All right. Evan, how about you?
I think one of the biggest things they'd have to do is they'd have to change the because the idea behind what happened was when they made cartridges, they only had so much room to program stuff in, so they had to make the person feel like they got their money's worth for the game, for how much money they paid for that game. So they would make these games that would take longer than normal, either by making it more difficult or just adding things to make you do whatever. So the bane of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is mostly just waiting. There's so much waiting in it, and whether it's in the combat, whether it's in just like waiting to finish a conversation, or not even waiting, just like time wasting, because then when you to travel between worlds, you have to walk all the way, you have to walk all the way here, then you have to walk over here, then you get the songs and you can transport to places, but then it's still it's a lot of busy work to distract you from the fact that there's not a lot to that game. And if it took all that busy work out, that game would be relatively short. The story would be relatively short. If you didn't have to do all the side things just to go up the mountain to the Goras, that game would be so much shorter. And what I mean by all this is that they're using waiting as just a difficulty supplement. It's not that it's hard, but the fact that all the enemies fight the same way, it's a pattern, and so it's a pattern that I see, that it's not that all these enemies are unique and different in their own way. It's just, no, they programmed it this way so that it would take you longer, so that you would get your money's worth for this game. That wasn't, that if you take all that out and if you make it more simple like the other games, then all of a sudden it's not as long and you're done with it within an hour or so. So I think they would have to change that, and then they would have to change the waiting, and I think just make it more simple, like less like of a crazy story, because like the original Zelda was less about who you were but more about what you were doing, and yeah. So
All right. Any rebuttal to that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I don't really think there's much waiting in the game, and I think each enemy has its own unique pattern, not necessarily based on waiting. I think Zelda, because of the type of game it is, just kind of this fake open world type game. Also, Ocarina of Time never claimed to be an open world game. That was something that came on later on with other games. But yeah, I think if you consider things like waiting in between attacks and talking to people and stuff like that and roaming around, a lot of modern games have much more waiting. Like even Assassin's Creed, like even if you count something like a loading screen where you're like 3 minutes just running around and this just like place while you wait for the next place to load or next cutscene to load, or if you're waiting for like a 5-minute cutscene to take place, there's a lot more waiting in games like that than Ocarina of Time. And I think just the way Ocarina of Time is set up, it might feel a little bit slow paced, but I think it's just more methodical and isn't necessarily a bad isn't really a bad thing, honestly. I think it's not like super fast paced, but it's not slow paced either. I wouldn't say, and I think there's a really huge amount of content in this game, and a lot of it does end up being side quests or side stories with some characters, and it is pretty simple, but I still think it provides a lot more interesting characters and side quests and upgrades than a lot of games today, where you go around and you open a chest and all you get is money. Like even some of the later Zelda games have done that. For example, Breath of the Wild, you'll open a chest and you get a weapon that breaks after like 10 hits. Or you get like 50 rupees, or you get arrows. But in this game, you'll get a heart piece, or an upgrade, or you do a side quest and you get like a wallet that holds more money, or a bigger bow. So I think in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, when you did side quests and you got like chests and you got like a reward, it was better than rewards a lot of games nowadays do, where it's something that just gets wasted and you don't have it anymore. So I thought Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask did a great job of offering something, rewards to the player that were meaningful, and you felt like you actually got something, instead of going through a whole side quest and you just get a stronger weapon that looks different, but it's really the same weapon.
Evan, rebuttal to that?
I mean, just quick one. I guess waiting was the wrong word to use. I think I would still stand by. There's a lot of busy work for not a lot of payoff, and the payoff that you get in like earlier game, like Link to the Past, is like all the suspense leading up to you figuring out how to get to the chest is all the suspense you need, and then the payoff is instant. Whereas Ocarina of Time started this thing where there's this big dramatic cinematic thing where he's opening a chest, and it's like, this might be just a personal thing, but just hurry up and show the treasure. I don't care about this. Just because the game has to be all 3D whooshy whooshy now, like we have to wait for him to finish this sequence so I can see what it is, and then it's kind of, and sometimes it's kind of disappointing because it's this big dramatic thing, and then it's like, oh, 10 rupees, okay. And so whereas it's instantaneous. It's just boom, you see what you got and you move on. And the suspense leading up to that was getting to the chest. That's all you need. It was like running to the presents underneath the Christmas tree. But there wasn't like you didn't have to wait for all this dramatic music to finish before you can open your present. You could just open it, and that was it. And that was all the suspense you needed. So I think the intentions were good, but it was just misplaced, and there was just a lot of busy work to distract you from the fact that there wasn't as much content as I think people think there was.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we covered a lot of ground with this, but I think at the end of the day, do Zelda games hold up 100%? Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask? No, I think it's impossible for them to hold up 100%. Graphics, for example, is just not up to par. to releases nowadays. I think gameplay, there are improvements that could be made, but I still think and there are improvements that were made later on. But I still think Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are some of the not only funnest games I've played, but if I play them right now, I'd still have just as much fun as playing other games. I've like come into a lot of games recently that their gameplay is just kind of like an afterthought. For example, the Telltale games, and those are more about story, like The Walking Dead and Batman. The Telltale games are story and choice driven, but when you walk around and you like actually do combat type stuff, it just is kind of an abomination. And they have really good story and writing and everything, but they're full of glitches and they crash, and sometimes your file won't save, and that's not anything I had to deal with Zelda. I just was able to play through the experience, and it's just, I think it's just a really good time. And I think the fact that Link really doesn't have a personality, he's just supposed to be you, kind of. He's supposed to be a link between you and the game. And I think even though there is kind of a script that's pretty strict, it allows enough freedom to where you feel like you are the character. You could just go around and do anything, within reason. Or maybe a little less than reason, because it's not real life. But I think it's enough to where that you can have a good time, but still be interested in the main story and want to follow the main story. But just go outside of that and kind of do your own thing. I don't think it's an open world game not meant to be an open world game. It was just something new for Zelda. And I think as a reinvention of Zelda, it did a really great job and does a really great job at making it interesting and fun and kind of giving you story but making you want more while still really enjoying like the characters. And it's just like this just really cool fairy tale that it just kind of makes you feel like a kid playing it. And maybe that's just me because I did play it as a kid, but I think despite some of the outdated parts of the mechanics, I think it's still better than probably most games that come out today, because there are a lot of games that come out that we don't even talk about, but I would say it still stands as some of the best games of all time. So Zelda train. That just undermined my entire argument.
All right, Evan, closing statement.
I'll try to keep this short and sweet, but Ocarina of Time was a revolution for the time, hasn't aged well, and a lot of the mechanics that we remember, we go back and we play them, and then we realize, they weren't as good as we remember. And then Majora's Mask, even though we didn't touch on it that much, in reality is just like a copy and paste of almost the same game, but you're just playing as young Link, not in Hyrule, which kind of defeats the purpose of Legend of Zelda altogether. Now, my gripes about the game, a lot of it I have a lot of personal bias towards them, where I had frustrations with it, and everyone thinks that they know how to fix something, and they think that their ideas are better. So that's where a lot of my ideas come from. But at the same time, I think that they're somewhat valid, only because there are some things that we were able to agree on, but there are other things that we don't. And I think that's where where personal bias comes in, and that I think that's something that we won't be able to avoid. But overall, is it a game that was revolutionary? Yes. Is it one of the greatest games of all time? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of games that were better, that are better, and not even take into account that they look better, but just let like a lot of the story and a lot of like the game feel is better, and that this game, like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, on an all-time list for me would be fairly low. Not like into the 50s, but maybe in the 20s or 30s. There would probably be about 15 games I would pick ahead of those before.
All right. Well, thank you both.
Yes,
and
sir.
just to wrap up, I have made a few highlight points on some of the topics we've been talking about. Overall, Evan has made a lot of good points, one of which being that it was good for its time, but it has not lasted that test of time. Nathanael disagreed and said it's currently good and would last against current games. Evan stated that they missed opportunities to improve upon the game and learn upon the models that they've made previously, and they strayed too far from the path, what with the different combat system and such. Nathanael disagreed and said that it revolutionized gaming and changed certain aspects of current games by using that said mechanic. Evan stated it forces to play the game and that it's not enough for someone to stray upon a path that they want to go on when they're being told what to do the whole time. Nathaniel disagreed, said that it has hidden elements to the game that add charm, in which Evan rebutted and said it's very linear and constricted, and that those little side paths don't give you much to use in the main storyline. And Nathaniel stated it has good pacing and minor side quests and minor characters that are important that allow you to have more experience and engagement into the game. And Evan disagreed, said it's a lot of busy work and it doesn't have an expansive story considering the amount of time you have to wait to do things. And then finally Nathaniel says it's a great game to play currently, and current games have something to learn from this game, just based on how it was constructed and all the minor things that went into making it. And Evan disagreed, said it's unnecessary fluff and animations that make you wait instead of just giving you the game that you want to play. And
oh my gosh, David, you made us seem like we disagreed so much more than we actually did.
No.
Disagreed.
No, it's just the main topics and the points made by both.
Just our main arguments.
Yeah, I know.
So, but I think overall, I would say that the game for itself is a good game. We're not saying it's not a good game.
Yeah.
And it has not lasted the test of time, and it is one of those games where you can't play it with the mindset that it is a game that will fight against some current games, because it just will not stand its ground, and it's lacking in a lot of areas where they could have made up for it doing certain things a different way. Evan made the statement that if they kept with the original plot of Zelda, where you're just exploring, and the targeting aspect and the combat aspect took away a lot of that experience and made you wait and waste time in doing so. I do agree with that, where a lot of time is wasted doing unnecessary things, fighting unnecessary monsters for items that you don't necessarily need. On the other hand, I suppose that would appeal to certain gamers that like to have that 100% completionist attitude. They want to go find those little things. They want to go do certain things. They want to 100% get every item in the game, max out a wallet, whatever, what have you. There's people that enjoy that too, and I think that's a great game for them too. But overall, I think what I've taken away from it is that this game isn't immortal, and it's not meant to be immortalized. Games have replaced it as the best game, and we've seen games come out currently that we consider some of the best games of all time, and I'm sure in 10 or 15 years we'll be saying the same thing about it. So I do agree with Evan in this case, that it is a good game, but it does lack in a lot of areas that they could improve on, and I don't think it could be considered one of the top games, considering how much it would need to improve to do so. And interesting that stated that both of you agreed that where it's currently priced is fair, considering the game, and that you both enjoy the game in that aspect, that you would go and pay that $35 to $40 to play it again.
For whatever reason, yeah.
Yeah, and
whether nostalgic or historical,
Yep.
Yeah.
So
not to say we didn't enjoy the games.
No,
like that's not what.
No.
That's not my argument. It's just that I don't think it's as good as people remember it. So that was my thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, David, for moderating our
thank you both.
debate. You did
I appreciate
a fantastic job.
You both guys, man.
And thank you, Evan. Great debate.
Handshakes all around.
I think. I think the viewers really enjoy this debate.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed this
really
debate.
Good. Yeah, I thought that was very civil. We didn't
Absolutely.
It was not a civil war. It was just civil.
No. Yeah.
Pick Evan or Nathanael.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Text 5 to 4567895. Texting fees apply.
Text either of our names to 619-756.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair. My name's so long. Nobody will be able to spell it.
I don't think you realize I was actually saying my number, my cell phone.
Oh my gosh!
I didn't finish it.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for joining in to this week's Nerd Out, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Oh my goodness.
When you wake up and then you're just like, I have things to do today, but my body's just telling me no, when my mind is telling me yes.
My mind's telling me no, but my body.
Oh, that hurts so much. Yes. My body is not telling me yes. My body's so broken right now.
My voice is shot, so I can't.
What happened? Were you at a concert?
I was at Future Quest with my youth kids.
Oh, so a kids concert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
kids rave.
Yeah. I mean, I also was fighting a cough the whole time. I still am, but
Yeah.
so that didn't help.
Yeah, Nathaniel just scooted subliminally 4 inches over.
His soul scooted
He was
away
like-
from me. He was just like, "Oh, you were sick."
Yeah.
My soul was telling me no, and my body was also telling me no. Everything was saying no.
No, God.
In sync. Yeah. Oh God, please no.
Don't do it.